Imagine a world where cunning is currency and betrayal lurks around every corner. Welcome to the story of Paul the Fox Volpe, a man whose rise and fall would shake the very foundations of the criminal underworld. In the gritty streets of Toronto's Ward District, a young Italian immigrant would learn the art of survival, setting the stage for a legacy that would captivate and terrify in equal measure. From petty theft to real estate fraud, Volpe's journey would take him from the depths of poverty to the heights of criminal power, only to end in a shocking act of betrayal that would forever change the landscape of organized crime. This is the tale of the Fox, a story of ambition, power, and the ultimate price of survival in a world where loyalty is as fragile as a house of cards. Chapter 1. The Roots of Cunning. Early life in the Ward District. The streets of Toronto's Ward District in the 1930s were a far cry from the glittering skyline that would one day define the city. This impoverished enclave, home to waves of Italian immigrants, was a maze of cramped tenements and narrow alleyways, where the struggle for survival was etched into the very fabric of daily life. It was amidst this gritty backdrop that Paul the Fox Volpe was born, his destiny forever intertwined with the harsh realities of the urban underworld. As the seventh son of Vincenzo and Maria Volpe, Paul's early years were marked by the constant challenge of eking out an existence. His parents, like so many others, had fled the economic devastation of post-war Italy, clinging to the promise of a better life in Canada. But the harsh winters and the relentless grind of working-class life quickly tempered that dream, leaving the Volpe family to navigate a world that offered little in the way of opportunity or security. From a young age, Paul learned the value of cunning and adaptability. He watched as his father, a skilled carpenter, fought to maintain steady employment, often resorting to odd jobs and under-the-table arrangements to make ends meet. His mother, Maria, worked tirelessly, taking in laundry and sewing to supplement the meager income. Yet, despite their hardships, the Volpe household was imbued with a sense of resilience and a determination to provide for their large brood. It was in this crucible of adversity that Paul's character began to take shape. He observed his parents' unwavering dedication, but also noted the precariousness of their situation. As the younger Volpe siblings struggled to find their footing, Paul recognized that he would need to rely on his own wits and instincts to carve out a path forward. The Ward District was a breeding ground for both opportunity and danger, and Paul quickly learned to navigate its treacherous streets. He spent his days running errands, scavenging for scraps, and occasionally indulging in petty theft, small acts of defiance against the constraints of his circumstances. It was during these formative years that Paul's innate sense of cunning began to emerge, as he learned to read the shifting tides of the neighborhood and anticipate the moves of those around him. Volpe's siblings, each with their own unique personalities and talents, provided a rich tapestry of influence. His older brothers, Dante and Luca, were drawn to the allure of the criminal underworld, engaging in small-time hustles and street-level skirmishes. Their exploits, while often reckless, ignited a spark within Paul, who observed their exploits with a keen and calculating eye. In contrast, his sisters, Sophia and Julia, embodied a different path, one marked by a quiet resilience and a desire for stability. They watched over the younger children, instilling in them the importance of family and the need to maintain a semblance of respectability even in the face of adversity. These disparate influences would ultimately shape the trajectory of Paul's life as he grappled with the pull of ambition and the weight of familial obligations. As Paul grew older, his fascination with the workings of the criminal world deepened. He witnessed the power dynamics that governed the ward, where local gangs and petty criminals jockeyed for control of the streets. Observing these power struggles with a keen intellect, Paul began to formulate his own strategies, learning to navigate the treacherous landscape with a deftness that belied his youth. It was during this time that Paul earned the moniker the Fox, a testament to his cunning and elusive nature. He possessed an uncanny ability to anticipate the moves of his rivals, often slipping through the grasp of those who sought to do him harm. This reputation, forged in the crucible of the ward's underworld, would become the foundation upon which Paul would build his formidable criminal empire. Yet, even as he honed his skills and cultivated his ambitions, Paul remained acutely aware of the precariousness of his family's existence. The specter of poverty and the constant struggle for survival were ever present, fueling his drive to transcend the limitations of his circumstances. It was this dual nature, the desire for power and the need for security, that would ultimately shape the trajectory of Paul Volpe's life, propelling him towards a destiny that would captivate and terrify those who crossed his path. Chapter 2. The Rise of the Fox, a Meteoric Ascent. As the streets of Toronto's Ward District echoed with the laughter of children and the chatter of hard-working immigrants, young Paul Volpe was already honing his skills in the art of survival. Born into a family of 7 siblings, he quickly learned that cunning and resourcefulness were the keys to navigating the harsh realities of life in the impoverished neighborhood. Volpe's early forays into petty crime were fueled by a burning desire to escape the confines of poverty. He would slip through the crowded alleyways, his nimble fingers deftly lifting wallets and snatching purses from unsuspecting passers-by. With each successful heist, his confidence grew, and his reputation as a skilled thief began to spread among the local criminal element. It was during these formative years that Volpe earned his notorious nickname, the Fox. His ability to evade capture, coupled with his keen intellect and strategic thinking, earned him a reputation for being elusive and cunning, traits that would serve him well in the years to come. As Volpe's criminal activities escalated, he began to forge connections with other aspiring criminals in the area. He recognized the potential in forming alliances, understanding that strength in numbers could provide a level of protection and resources that solo endeavors could not. Volpe's natural charisma and persuasive skills allowed him to navigate the treacherous waters of the criminal underworld, forging partnerships and alliances that would later prove invaluable. One such alliance was with a group of Italian-Canadian mobsters who had established a foothold in the city's loan sharking and extortion rackets. Volpe's keen understanding of financial operations and his ability to manipulate the system quickly caught the attention of these seasoned criminals. They saw in him a valuable asset, someone who could expand their reach and bring in new revenue streams. Under the tutelage of these mentors, Volpe honed his skills in the art of loan sharking and extortion. He developed a keen eye for identifying vulnerable individuals and businesses, leveraging their desperation to extract exorbitant interest rates and protection fees. Volpe's ability to strike a delicate balance between intimidation and negotiation allowed him to maintain a level of control that kept his victims compliant and his criminal empire growing. As Volpe's reputation spread, so did the scope of his criminal activities. He began to venture beyond the confines of Toronto, establishing connections in the bustling city of Atlantic City, where the emerging casino industry presented new opportunities for financial exploitation. Volpe's keen understanding of real estate and his ability to manipulate the system allowed him to engage in complex fraud schemes, siphoning funds and diverting properties to his own benefit. The Fox's rise to power was marked by a series of calculated moves, each one designed to expand his reach and solidify his position within the criminal hierarchy. He navigated the treacherous landscape of rival gangs and law enforcement with a level of cunning that left his adversaries scrambling to keep up. Volpe's ability to anticipate threats and adapt his strategies accordingly earned him a reputation as a formidable force to be reckoned with. However, as Volpe's criminal empire grew, so too did the risks associated with his position. The constant threat of retaliation from rival factions and the ever-present shadow of law enforcement loomed large, forcing Volpe to maintain a delicate balance between his public persona and his clandestine activities. Despite the challenges, Volpe's ambition remained undiminished. He relished the thrill of the chase, the power of manipulation, and the allure of wealth and influence. The Ward District, once a humble backdrop to his childhood, had become a canvas upon which he painted his criminal masterpiece, a testament to his cunning and a testament to the precarious nature of power in the world of organized crime. As the 1970s dawned, Volpe's empire had reached its zenith, and his status as a criminal mastermind was cemented. But the question remained: how long could he maintain his grip on the reins of power before the weight of his own ambition and the relentless pursuit of his enemies caught up with him? Chapter 3. Building the Empire, a Criminal Network. As the 1950s dawned, Paul the Fox Volpe's criminal exploits had already caught the attention of law enforcement and rival gangs alike. Having honed his skills in the shadows of Toronto's Ward District, he was now poised to expand his reach and establish a vast criminal empire that would span both sides of the border. Volpe's ambition was insatiable, fueled by a desire to escape the poverty of his youth and secure the power and wealth he craved. With a keen intellect and an innate ability to manipulate situations to his advantage, he began to diversify his criminal activities, moving beyond petty theft and into more sophisticated financial crimes. One of Volpe's earliest ventures was in the realm of loan sharking. He recognized the lucrative potential of providing quick cash to those in need, often at exorbitant interest rates. By leveraging his connections in the Italian-Canadian community and cultivating a reputation for ruthlessness, Volpe was able to establish a network of debtors who were too afraid to default on their payments. His ability to collect on these debts, sometimes through the use of violence, only further cemented his standing within the criminal underworld. As Volpe's wealth and influence grew, he began to diversify his criminal portfolio. Extortion became a lucrative source of income, as he strong-armed local businesses and even politicians, demanding protection money in exchange for keeping them safe from the threat of his organization. His cunning mind allowed him to identify vulnerable targets and manipulate them with a combination of charm and intimidation. Perhaps Volpe's most ambitious endeavor was his foray into real estate fraud. Recognizing the potential for profit in the rapidly changing urban landscape, he began to acquire properties through a complex web of shell companies and straw buyers. By exploiting loopholes in the legal system and leveraging his connections within the financial sector, Volpe was able to engage in a variety of schemes, from mortgage fraud to the illegal conversion of residential properties into lucrative commercial ventures. As his criminal empire expanded, Volpe's need for a stronghold in the United States became increasingly apparent. He set his sights on the bustling city of Atlantic City, which was on the cusp of a casino-driven renaissance. Establishing connections with key figures in the New Jersey underworld, Volpe began to launder money and invest in various illicit enterprises, from illegal gambling operations to the infiltration of legitimate businesses. Volpe's ability to navigate the treacherous waters of organized crime was nothing short of remarkable. He cultivated a network of loyal associates who carried out his directives with ruthless efficiency while simultaneously maintaining a veneer of respectability in the public eye. His charisma and cunning allowed him to forge strategic alliances with other criminal organizations, ensuring that his reach extended far beyond the confines of Toronto and the Ward District. However, Volpe's ascent was not without its challenges. The criminal landscape was rife with competition, and he found himself in constant conflict with rival gangs vying for control of the same lucrative ventures. Turf wars erupted, and Volpe was forced to employ increasingly violent tactics to protect his interests and eliminate threats to his empire. The RCMP, too, had taken notice of Volpe's growing criminal empire. Determined to dismantle his network, they launched a series of investigations, employing undercover operatives and surveillance techniques to gather evidence against him. Volpe, ever the strategist, adapted his methods, using his vast web of connections to stay one step ahead of the law and maintain the illusion of a legitimate businessman. As the 1960s drew to a close, Volpe's criminal empire had reached its zenith. He had amassed a fortune, with his fingers in countless illicit pies, from drug trafficking to extortion. His reputation as the Fox had only grown, with his ability to outmaneuver rivals and evade capture becoming the stuff of legend. Yet, even as he basked in the trappings of his success, Volpe knew that the precarious nature of the criminal world meant that his reign could be cut short at any moment. Chapter 4. The High-Stakes Game, Power and Betrayal. The 1970s marked the peak of Paul the Fox Volpe's criminal empire. His sprawling network of illicit activities stretched from the streets of Toronto to the glittering casinos of Atlantic City, cementing his reputation as a cunning and ruthless mastermind. Volpe's lavish lifestyle was a testament to his success, but it also painted a target on his back, as rivals and law enforcement alike sought to take him down. Ensconced in his penthouse suite overlooking the bustling Atlantic City boardwalk, Volpe reveled in the trappings of his power. Surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants, he orchestrated a web of financial crimes, from money laundering to real estate fraud, all while maintaining a veneer of respectability. His ability to navigate the treacherous waters of organized crime had earned him the loyalty of his crew, but he knew that in this world, trust was a fragile commodity. Volpe's rise had been fueled by an insatiable ambition, a drive to escape the poverty of his youth and secure a legacy of wealth and influence. Yet, as he sat at the helm of his empire, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that his position was tenuous, that the slightest misstep could bring the entire edifice crashing down. The tension was palpable as Volpe's rivals, both in Canada and the United States, jockeyed for a piece of the action. The Italian-Canadian Mafia, with whom he had forged lucrative alliances, viewed him with a mixture of respect and resentment, wary of his growing power and independence. Volpe's ability to navigate these delicate relationships had been the key to his success, but he knew that the slightest betrayal could prove his undoing. One night, as Volpe sat in his private office, reviewing the latest financial reports, a knock at the door interrupted his concentration. It was one of his most trusted lieutenants, a man he had known since their days on the streets of Toronto. The look on the man's face told Volpe that something was amiss. "Boss, we've got a problem," the lieutenant said, his voice tense. "There's been a hit on one of our guys in Atlantic City. It looks like the Gambino family is moving in on our turf." Volpe's brow furrowed as he processed the information. The Gambino family, one of the most powerful crime syndicates in the United States, had long been a thorn in his side. Their incursion into Atlantic City threatened to disrupt the carefully constructed balance of power that Volpe had worked so hard to maintain. "Gather the crew," Volpe commanded, his voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of steel. "We need to send a message that this is our territory and we won't be pushed out without a fight." As his lieutenants scrambled to assemble the team, Volpe's mind raced, weighing the risks and potential consequences of escalating the conflict. He knew that the Gambinos were not to be trifled with, and that a full-blown war could jeopardize everything he had built. But his pride and sense of self-preservation refused to back down. In the days that followed, Volpe orchestrated a series of retaliatory strikes, targeting the Gambinos' operations and sowing chaos in their ranks. The streets of Atlantic City became a battleground, with the two crime syndicates engaging in a deadly game of one-upmanship. Volpe's cunning and strategic prowess were on full display as he outmaneuvered his rivals at every turn. Yet, as the conflict intensified, Volpe began to sense a growing unease within his own organization. Whispers of discontent and suspicion filtered through the ranks, as some of his trusted lieutenants questioned the wisdom of his actions. The strain of maintaining control in the face of such high-stakes adversity was taking a toll, and Volpe found himself increasingly isolated, forced to rely on a shrinking circle of confidants. The breaking point came when Volpe received a chilling warning from a former associate, a man he had once considered a close ally. "The Gambinos aren't the only ones who want you gone, Volpe," the man had said, his voice laced with a mixture of fear and regret. "You've made too many enemies, and they're closing in." Volpe's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. His empire, built on a foundation of cunning and ruthlessness, was now crumbling around him. The very loyalty and power that had once been his greatest assets had become his greatest vulnerabilities. Betrayal lurked in the shadows, and Volpe knew that his days were numbered. As he sat in his office, staring out at the glittering lights of Atlantic City, Volpe knew that he had to make a decision, one that would determine the course of the rest of his life. Would he continue to fight, risking everything in a desperate bid for survival, or would he seek a way out, even if it meant betraying the very code that had defined his criminal career? The weight of the choice before him was crushing, and Volpe found himself torn between his desire for self-preservation and the loyalty that had once been the cornerstone of his empire. The high-stakes game he had played for so long had finally caught up to him, and the fate of the fox hung in the balance. Chapter 5. The Fatal Decision, Cooperation and Consequences. The air was thick with tension as Paul Volpe sat alone in his lavish Atlantic City penthouse, staring out at the glittering skyline. The decision he now faced would test the limits of his cunning and challenge the very foundations of his life in the underworld. For years, Volpe had navigated the treacherous waters of organized crime, building a vast network of illicit enterprises that stretched from Toronto to the bustling casinos of Atlantic City. His ruthless ambition and strategic brilliance had earned him a reputation as one of the most formidable players in the game. But as the Gambino family's influence began to encroach on his territory, the walls were closing in. Volpe had always prided himself on his ability to stay one step ahead of his rivals and the law, but the pressure was mounting. Whispers of discontent within his own ranks, coupled with the relentless pursuit of the RCMP, had shaken his confidence. He knew that his days of unchallenged power were numbered. As he contemplated his options, a chilling realization dawned on him. The loyalty he had once taken for granted was now a fragile commodity. The very men he had trusted to have his back were now eyeing him warily, sensing the vulnerability in his once impenetrable armor. Volpe's mind raced, weighing the consequences of his choices. He could continue to fight, risking everything in a desperate bid to maintain his empire. Or he could make the unthinkable decision to betray the very code that had defined his criminal career and cooperate with the authorities. The thought of such a betrayal was abhorrent to Volpe. He had built his reputation on his unwavering loyalty to the Mafia, a trait that had earned him the respect and fear of his peers. But the stakes had never been higher, and the threat to his life was undeniable. As he paced the plush confines of his penthouse, Volpe's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he was consumed by a burning desire to preserve his legacy, to go down fighting and maintain his reputation as the cunning and untouchable fox. But the pragmatic side of him knew that such a course of action would likely lead to his demise, leaving his family unprotected and his empire in ruins. The decision was agonizing, but in the end, Volpe's instinct for survival won out. With a heavy heart, he made the fateful call to the RCMP, offering to cooperate in exchange for a chance at starting anew. It was a betrayal of the highest order, a violation of the Mafia's sacred code of silence that would forever tarnish his reputation. As the RCMP agents arrived at his doorstep, Volpe steeled himself for the consequences of his actions. He knew that in the eyes of his former associates, he would be branded a traitor, a coward who had chosen self-preservation over loyalty. The retribution would be swift and merciless, and he would be forever marked as a pariah in the criminal underworld. Yet, as he was escorted away, Volpe couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The weight of maintaining his empire had become too much to bear, and the constant threat of violence had worn him down. In the end, the desire to live and protect his family had outweighed the code that had once defined his life. As the car carrying Volpe pulled away, the once mighty fox knew that his legacy would forever be tarnished. The cautionary tale of his rise and fall would serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of ambition and the fragility of power in the high-stakes game of organized crime. Volpe's decision to cooperate had sealed his fate, but perhaps in the end, it was the only way he could truly escape the clutches of the criminal world he had once dominated. Chapter 6: Legacy of the Fox, a Cautionary Tale. The Life of Paul. The Fox Volpe had reached its dramatic conclusion, but the echoes of his criminal empire continued to reverberate long after his downfall. As the dust settled on the wreckage of his once formidable criminal network, the true legacy of the cunning mastermind became a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. In the aftermath of Volpe's betrayal of the Mafia's code of silence, the criminal underworld was left in a state of upheaval. The news of his cooperation with the RCMP had spread like wildfire, shattering the trust and loyalty that had once been the foundation of his empire. Former allies and associates, once bound by the unwritten rules of the game, now viewed Volpe with a mixture of contempt and fear, knowing that his actions had irrevocably tarnished the reputation of all those who had once been in his orbit. The swift and brutal retribution that followed Volpe's decision to turn informant was a stark reminder of the consequences of such a betrayal. Rival gangs and mafia families, sensing an opportunity to seize control of the lucrative criminal enterprises Volpe had built, moved swiftly to eliminate any trace of his influence. The streets of Toronto and Atlantic City became a battleground, as the power vacuum left by Volpe's downfall ignited a violent struggle for dominance. In the midst of this chaos, the RCMP and other law enforcement agencies scrambled to capitalize on Volpe's cooperation, using the intelligence he provided to dismantle the intricate web of criminal activity he had orchestrated over the years. Detailed accounts of his financial schemes, extortion rackets, and real estate fraud emerged, painting a disturbing picture of the scale and complexity of his operations. The sheer audacity and cunning with which Volpe had navigated the criminal landscape left many investigators both impressed and horrified. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the public's fascination with Volpe's story only grew. His life became the subject of intense media scrutiny, with journalists and true crime enthusiasts alike delving into the intricacies of his rise and fall. Books, documentaries, and even fictionalized adaptations began to emerge, each offering a unique perspective on the man known as the Fox. However, the legacy of Paul Volpe extended far beyond the sensationalized narratives. His story served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the perils of unchecked ambition and the fragility of power within the world of organized crime. The themes of loyalty, betrayal, and the consequences of one's choices resonated deeply, sparking discussions about the moral complexities that underpin the criminal underworld. In the years that followed, criminologists and sociologists examined Volpe's life, seeking to understand the psychological and societal factors that had shaped his trajectory. They explored the role of poverty, immigration, and the lack of legitimate opportunities in driving individuals towards a life of crime. The allure of power, wealth, and the promise of a better life were all factors that contributed to Volpe's descent into the criminal abyss. Yet, even as the details of his crimes were laid bare, there remained a sense of fascination and, in some cases, even admiration for Volpe's sheer cunning and resourcefulness. The ability to outmaneuver rivals, evade law enforcement, and build a formidable criminal empire was, in the eyes of some, a testament to his intelligence and adaptability. This duality in the public's perception of Volpe highlighted the complex and often contradictory nature of the human condition. As the years passed, the legacy of Paul the Fox Volpe continued to loom large, a cautionary tale that resonated with each new generation. His story served as a stark reminder that even the most cunning and ambitious individuals are not immune to the consequences of their actions. The fragility of power, the betrayal of trust, and the ultimate price of survival in the criminal underworld were all woven into the tapestry of Volpe's life, leaving an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. In the end, the legacy of the Fox stood as a testament to the complexities of the human experience, a cautionary tale that challenged the very notion of morality and the limits of ambition. Volpe's life had been a high-stakes game, played with a level of cunning and calculation that captivated and horrified in equal measure. And as the echoes of his downfall continued to reverberate, the lessons of his story remained a powerful reminder of the perils that await those who dare to tread the perilous path of the criminal elite. As we conclude this thrilling journey through the life of Paul the Fox Volpe, I hope you've gained insight into the complexities of the criminal underworld. If you found this video captivating, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating true crime stories. Push the bell icon to stay notified of our latest uploads, and if you know someone who'd appreciate this tale of ambition and betrayal, share this video with them. Your support helps us continue bringing these gripping narratives to life. Until next time, remember, even the most cunning players can fall prey to their own game.